So can you hear me? So good morning, everyone. Today we're gonna be talking about diversity. We're gonna be a bilingual panel, so you're gonna listen to us according to the channel that you choose. Um, we're gonna be talking about diversity, and we're gonna basically be talking about diversity through the journeys of Michael and Andrea. Um, we're not going to be, so the topic of the panel is technology as a tool for social inclusion, but we're not going to be talking about digital technology or artificial intelligence. We're going to be talking about people, and we're going to be talking about the impact of diversity through their journeys. So I won't be speaking much longer. I will let them introduce themselves, and we're going to be doing the bio in a little bit different ways. So I will let them introduce themselves. The idea was to start with Andrea. So we had a little problem with the microphones. So I'll hand it to her so she can tell you a little bit about her. And the idea here is that you're going to learn about diversity through the impact that diversity had on their career, but also the impact that they had on diversity for others. So, Andrea, with you.
So hello. We thought that we'll be bilingual, but I just need to switch for Português. Sorry. Bom dia, pessoal. Eu sou Andrea. Eu sou advogada de formação. Hoje trabalho em uma indústria farmacêutica dinamarquesa. Eu sou filha de nigeriano com brasileira. E eu gosto muito de fazer essa introdução quando eu falo de mim, porque isso cunha muito a pessoa que eu sou e determina os lugares para onde eu escolhi estar, escolhi perseguir. Eu sou mãe de Helena e Alice, duas meninas. Sou casada com o Leandro. E, para mim, falar sobre diversidade e inclusão, mais do que compartilhar conhecimentos, é poder provocar reflexões. Eu sempre sou muito animada de poder estar em espaços como esse, onde a gente consegue falar com a gente mesmo, né? A gente parar um pouco do nosso dia a dia e poder falar sobre diversidade, poder falar de vários outros assuntos que no dia a dia a gente não consegue fazer com tanta qualidade devido à correria e devido a vários outros compromissos que tem. Mas sempre que eu recebo esse tipo de convite, eu fico muito entusiasmada de poder compartilhar e poder estar nesses espaços, que, sem dúvida, para mim, faz muita diferença quando a gente para com qualidade, se escuta, compartilha, troca ideias, para daqui a gente conseguir avançar e conseguir implementar ações mais efetivas dentro das nossas realidades. Então, muito obrigada por vocês estarem aqui, muito obrigada pelo PITIS, a ABPI, e espero que a gente tenha uma hora bastante proveitosa de compartilhamento.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about the beginning of your career você quer falar um pouco sobre o começo da sua carreira e como você foi impactada pela diversidade e como isso fez parte da sua formação profissional?
Sim, eu costumo
Yes,
dizer que
I used to say that I chose the legal profession and the legal professional chose me. But today I'm more aware about the understanding. Well, my mother is lawyer also and a huge influence for me. So during a certain time, I couldn't notice that, but today I can notice the influence. And I know that it was not a direct influence, but it was more a reference to have my mother as a lawyer and being able to see on her some possibilities for me regarding a background that is not so common for people like me, and also being a lawyer. So I had a very clear possibility. And in the same way, my father that also has a university degree, so this is normal. And I studied legal system due to this influence. And when I started my professional career, this reference that I had at home disappeared. I knew exactly for where should I go And then I have people like me in the market. So when after going to the market, I didn't see people like me. And then it was a tough pathway, not being able to see in this place at the same time was not receiving you and giving possibilities to foresee a future. So I had two options. Or I I could give up. It was not a place that was going to receive me and it was not for me the space. Or I could understand my capacity and then move forward. And today, by being here, this shows you what was my option, what I had chosen. And I think everything worked at the end of the day with some consequences in the meantime. And during a long time, it was hard to be able to navigate and to manage these differences, this lack of reference that I couldn't see. And then when I was in the market, labor, I saw that the market was not prepared. I always worked in multinational companies. Today I have more than 15 years experience in the area. I always worked in the legal department in multinational companies, and unfortunately not in a frequent way. I had people and I did not have this reference. So it was not inside the legal department that I was the only one, but I was the only one in the company as a whole. And this during a long time was something that was very hard. And but I'm not here only to bring bad news. I passed through different places and time was very good for with me. And today, after a time, I can fortunately see a change in this scenario when we talk about diversity and inclusion. And this is an agenda that is in the agenda of the companies. So it's important to talk on the perspective of gender, race, or issues regarding the community LGBTQA+. And for me, this is non-negotiable that we are not going to move back. And I think that from now we will gain and evolve more and more. And I share with you briefly an episode in one of my experience. I was very young. There was a person in the Italy company that I was working, and this person used to say whenever there was an opportunity, and the person asked me, "Why are you here?" But it was not an offense. You should be in another place. You should be in the TV. You should be an artist. You should be. You should parade because you're very nice. You're very beautiful. You have an exotic beauty. And then during a time, I was seeing this as a praise. Oh, she's saying that I'm nice, and she was always also thinking that she was praising me. And then, after some time, and creating more and having more maturity in my role in the spaces, I understood that she was not seeing myself as someone that could occupy that place. So I was exotic. I was like an animal in the zoo, at another place. This was not an offense, but it was in a structure that we are created and we are raised and exposed. And she was understanding that I should be in another place and that should not be in the corporate environment. So this was very hard. But as I was mentioning, we are in a different moment. And after a certain time in this sector and environment, I can see some effective and concrete changes to be able to make this real and to codify this diversity. Obviously, I'm talking more about the perspective of gender and race. And it's clear how much we evolved. Just to have an idea, in the previous company, I started something that I had never experienced before. That was to have 33% on the company black people. This is less than half, but this is a lot because can you remember in the beginning I always was the only one in the whole company. So when I was there and I realized that there were 33% of people, this was a tuning point. So regarding you, by seeing yourself and having a reference and being able to have a space of belonging and embracing you, and also to be able to identify some perspectives. So the company today is concerned about that, is committed to that, and this made a lot of difference for me. Today in the company that I work, I worked in a pharmaceutical company in the legal department. We are 40% of people that are self stated as black people. And this was moment and with no precedent. And this for sure is due to a movement that there is inside and outside the companies. But it's a commitment that these companies had to make difference, to understand as an actor and having a role of transformation, a social transformation that if it's not like this, we will not be able to do it. So we today live in a moment with a lot of growth and change, and I am more enthusiastic by knowing that my daughter, if they want to follow this pathway, they will have other references different from the ones that I had. So we see this being materialized in another way. And when, for example, I'm invited with other young girls in the company to be their mentor, and this I didn't have before. So someone to mirror myself and also to have as a reference and also a person to guide you in the company, providing some career guidelines. So today I have my, I call them like this, my mentees. And for me, this is a sign and reflects that is tangible about these actions that the company took.
So now Michael with you. Now Michael is going to introduce himself and as well talk about diversity perspective and how he was impacted as well by the changes and the importance that diversity gained throughout the years.
Thank you very much, Isabella and Andrea, for your introduction there. I'm very happy to be here today. Yeah, differently to Andrea, I'm a private practice lawyer throughout my whole career, been in private practice for 20 years, and there are some differences, I would say, and we can go on to talk about those between private practice and corporations and how they deal with diversity and the stage of the diversity journey that they are on. Also differently to you, I'm from a different family. I was the first person in my family to go to university, and so becoming a lawyer was, I guess, a big deal in my family for me as well. I'm also a gay man, and so from an LGBTQ perspective, I've lived the journey of diversity and how that has changed over my career. At the very start of my career, I was very nervous about being my full self in my job. I was not able to really be open with my colleagues and for fear of how that would impact my career going forward. But I was able to see through the visibility of role models very visible in the profession and who were there before me and were open about themselves, about their sexuality. I was able to see a reference point also, and that gave me the courage to be open about myself. But it's a challenge when you come from a minority background because you have this feeling that you don't belong and you don't really feel. So it's a little bit like imposter syndrome, right? And I know this is a big issue in gender related issues, which have been around for a bit longer than the diversity issues, I would say. But I experience still imposter syndrome all the time, and help of mentors, people who are very visible in the community, that helps make you feel more comfortable, make you feel that, yes, I belong here also, I have a place. Those are some of the reasons why I'm so interested in DEI, because I want to be that reference point also for future generations. I want to make sure that have to be afraid of being themselves in their employment and will be able to succeed in their careers. And I think that over the last 20 years, just like you have said, in law firms as well, which are traditionally very conservative. So big international law firms that I have been in are very conservative places, tend to be people from a certain sector of society, which I don't feel like I come from. But I've found a place there, and I've managed to make that my environment, be comfortable in that environment, and try to make change in that environment for next generations. And some of the things that we do, for example, in our firm, we have scholarships and so on to encourage people who are from different socioeconomic backgrounds to be able to apply and to consider applying for firms like ours that maybe 20 years ago they would not have thought would be a possibility for them. So that's probably enough of an introduction as to why I'm interested in the diversity area, why it impacts me, has shaped my journey as a lawyer, and where we are today, I think.
Perfect. I think that in a way you already entered in the next subject of our conversation. So now we are going to talk a little bit about this journey, but from a corporation or a firm perspective, and what they both had experience in their careers on what policies work the best, what are policies inside corporations or law firms that have the highest impact. And Andrea is going to talk a little bit about that from a corporation perspective. And then Michael is going to talk about that a little bit from a perspective of also helping build a policy inside of his own firm. So, Andrea, por favor, se você puder compartilhar um pouquinho com a gente.
Andrea, please, if you can share with us the policies that most impacted you in the companies in which you worked, and if you think that this can generate this idea of diversity, can you please share with us?
And this is unnegotiable. And what I think is important in these actions is what's behind this, the foundation for us to reach these spaces and manage to implement these changes. And I usually like to say that in the modern world, many things changed. Today we are globalized. It's more complex. AI, we have a new structure in place. And with this, complexity also came along. Today, the complexity in which we used to treat cases are not the same today. What I mean to say this is how we treated hunger previously is not the same 40 years later. The climate changes. The way we treated it in the past is not the way we treat them today. And with inclusion, it's the same. The tools that we used in the past are not the same because of the complexity that everything has nowadays. And to treat these issues, we need to change the way we speak with people in our corporations. We need to bring diversity in the true meaning of the word. This needs to be treated in the workplace. And with this, we need to understand the forms of diversity and how we speak of these issues and these two words that are invoked today. Diversity, the semantics of the word. And with different people and different plans need to be taken in consideration. journeys of race and sexual preferences, and bring these people, all people, to a reflection on this subject that is in our minds. And it's a little more just detailed, this concept, and more explicit. When we talk about inclusion, we need to understand that it's a perspective of a critical sense which is changing. And to give the sense we need to have, and if we think of everyone if in this room today, we need to understand our role and understand that we are privileged. We are here today in a resort, and we can be here and take this time on a Tuesday in Porto de Galinhas, high-class resort, talking about these issues. And I'm very happy, and I need to be careful when I speak about this, because it's not the privilege in the usual sense that we have. It's not a privilege due to our race. We understand that our society is built on slavery. It was built on slavery, and we need to understand this. And these designs were built, and the privileges started to happen. We need to look back and understand this perspective. This privilege started to happen, and based on, at the moment that I have a privilege, someone else is losing their space. But when I understand this privilege, what do I do with it? That's the starting point to think about inclusion. And inclusion also, in my perspective, is related to the quality with the relationships you have with others. Many times you need to understand that what is relevant to me is not important to others, but everything needs to be valued. Sometimes we start talking about people complaining all the time, me, or some other term to define someone as they always complaining. But sometimes we don't see that is due to a pain that he has in his heart. And based on that point, you need to establish a connection to build areas or spaces where that person may have a stage or a platform to speak, so that that person can deliver the best work possible. So inclusion starts there. And for me, I think privilege to be a part of some actions in places that I've worked in, that's a base. And many times there was sustenance, and many times there are good intentions, but these actions are not well organized or sustainable. So they don't happen at the end of the process, unfortunately. And then unfortunately, they don't have the impact that they were planned to have when they were conceptualized. So now we start working on structures of diversity and inclusion. For example, an area or a sector, a director or a manager, where you would have a budget for that sector and political backing from top management. This is an ideal world. This is maybe a utopia. I know it's hard. And sometimes if you wait for the ideal world, you don't get anything. But you also have the practical world, the possible world. When you can't get the perfect, you get the possible. So you start to build a group of affinity, and I'm talking in this perspective of race and gender, These are the main uh, topics in inclusion. And you start to look and see, because of these sectors, they bring people in to a space where they feel they belong. And they start to suggest other actions to be taken. And this affinity group, it should have allies, not necessarily black people or women, but who have power in the organization, so that this starts to work with some speakers outside the group that are influencers in the company. And this would be provocative for change. I think this is important. It's not hard to implement. And with other people involved, and I participate in groups that provoke changes in human resources. And in the HR department, usually they are more concrete, the changes. You see procedures starting to be implemented, the intention of people to look for students in universities that aren't the best student, for example. You need to be intentional in your drafting of professionals in the universities. And in offices, it's starting to happen very much in offices today, is the affirmative action recruiting. You need leaders, black leaders, so that this wheel starts to flow. You may have a shortcut to reach a situation that if you went through traditional means, you would take very much longer. And something that we can't do effectively is, if you make all of these actions and if you don't understand why this is happening, this is a problem. So much more than having a write down on the blackboard the objectives of the year is to have so many black workers, you need to understand why you're doing that and do it in a genuine way. Companies, for example, I've worked in the corporate world. These businesses aren't people. They don't sit here with us and dialogue. If you talk about a brand as being a person, this isn't the reality. The corporate world, the organism is not a person. People are the ones who make the changes. If people don't understand the processes, the sensibilization, we don't have genuine action, and these things, they're not effective changes. And this understanding of the process is part of the institutionalization of these changes. So everyone in the corporation needs to be a part of this change, or else the leader of that movement leaves the company and no one else talks about this.
We are talking about someone with more sensitivity. But if this person is no longer in the structure, this feeling will end. So it's important to sensitivize the people.
Muito bom, André. E assim,
Very
quando
good,
você falava, eu
Andrea.
meio que passei
When we
por
were
vários
talking,
filmes, mas
I
eu acho
was
que
almost recalling some things in my mind,
uma coisa que
because
você
a
falou
word that you mentioned that I think it's very important in diversity is the intention.
quando você quer mudar
Because when you want to change the
não tem outra
structure, the
forma, né?
status quo, there is no
E
other way.
falando, né,
And you
desse,
were talking about
desses
the
desafios
journey, the
de inserir
challenges
profissionais
to
nesse
insert the
mercado,
professionals in the market.
eu fiquei pensando assim nos
I was wondering about the spaces that we have in our office to increase this inclusion. And then there was an intentionality with a lot of affirmations by the inclusion of this as a corporate goal, reaching the bonus from different professionals, and with the literacy and connecting the story of people. Diversity has a collective intention, but the impact is always individual.
Now switching back to you, Michael, we were talking a little
Michael.
bit about intentionality in diversity and how sometimes you do need to have affirmative action and that you need to intentionally want to change some demographies of the firm and to choose the intersectionalities that you want to affect with your policies. And so now if you can share with us a little bit what you have been doing at Noer and the policies that you have started implementing and how it was to become the person responsible to make that change in your own firm.
Okay, sure. So at NUR, I mean, we may be a little bit later in the journey than a company like Novo Nordisk because law firms I find are a little bit slower in DEI issues than corporates, and a lot of this is driven, and we can probably talk about this later. A lot is driven by corporates telling law firms what they must do, that we must become more diverse, and so on. But that said, there is a genuine desire, intentionality in our firm. We are 3 diversity partners out of the partnership responsible for issues related to diversity. This is separate from the gender issue. We have separate partners responsible for gender equality, but the diversity other aspects are taken care of by 3 partners, and we are very deeply committed to making change in the firm and making the firm as diverse as possible. How we look at intersectionalities and specific areas of diversity, well, a few years ago, 3 years ago, we did a survey of the firm to try to understand who are members of our firm. So you say the people, the firm, the company is the people, who our people were. Anonymously done by a third-party company, we found out the demographics of our firm. We are 1,200 people, and I can tell you that we have every aspect of diversity within our firm, as you would expect. Maybe not at the percentages, 33% of black lawyers, for example, in a country like Germany, that's difficult. But we at least know the statistics. We know where we were as of 3 years ago, and we will regularly do that survey again to understand how our firm is changing. In terms of areas of diversity, we have identified areas that we need to work on. And this year, for example, one focuses on disability. We have made it the theme of our diversity year. So we celebrate Diversity Day every year, and we have events throughout the year. But this year we chose disability and disability in sport because it's a Paralympic year, and one of our pro bono clients is the German Paralympic Association. So we thought that would tie in nicely with the work that we do with them. But we have next year, for example, we've thought about focusing on age as a characteristic, and that's something each year we have to look and see how can we really make a difference and make people aware of the issues affecting this section of our firm. I mean, for example, the disability one, we thought about we gave gifts on Diversity Day to everyone, energy bars, and we thought about putting them high up in cupboards in the kitchen so that people would struggle to get them. To show that this is something that disabled people suffer with every single day of their lives. So it's a simple, practical thing that we take for granted, and they have to live with that. So it's about awareness, but there's definitely intentionality there to make a change and really to make people feel as welcome as they can be in a law firm environment, which is not it's not the easiest of environments to really to feel that you can thrive in, because it's very competitive. the financial requirements are usually very high in law firms. So it's tough, but we definitely are intending to affect change. And I think some of the activities that we've done have done that. In terms of why I took on the role. I was one of the three diversity partners. Well, Isabella knows this, but we worked together on the International Trademark Association Presidential Task Force on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in 2021, and that was a year and a half worth of work, very intense of learning how to make the INTA, the Global Trademark Association, more diverse and to represent its membership in a more inclusive manner and to make its members feel like they fully belong in the association. We can talk a little bit more about that and the activities we took on that, but that's one of the reasons why I thought I would like to also do this for my firms. And so from the beginning of this year, I've taken on officially one of those partnership roles of diversity partner. And it's intense. We have calls every week and
It's like a second job, right?
Yeah. But it's fun and you learn a lot. And I've got to know a lot of people across the firm. And we have also things like affinity groups and so on. But I think we are a little bit maybe more embryonic than in a company. And so it's not as easy for us to have affinity groups because we don't have hundreds of thousands of employees. But we still can make a start, and we have made a start, and we have some affinity groups that are doing very well, and at least people feel like they're not alone, that they have colleagues and peers who can help them, and we also have mentorship programs and things like that. So uh, similar activities, but maybe on a different scale between a law firm and a big corporation.
But I think, Mike, that something that you said, I mean, diversity connects to people. And when you do a census and you identify who are the people that your firm are comprised by, it's where you establish where and how you do your journey, because it's not one journey for every company. And I think that sometimes people are afraid to say we are starting it and we are later in the game. But there, you know, you just have to start it and to do it. So and I think that based on the work that you did at INTA, that we're going to talk about it a bit later, uh, it gave you a lot of a broader understanding also from an international perspective, right? Because this is a part of our organization. But before we dive into that, I will go back to Andrea. E aí, Andrea, eu queria falar
So,
pouquinho
Andrea, I would like to talk a little bit about the point that Michael mentioned. In fact, the legal offices are more traditional, they move in a slow way, but this change can be incentivized and pushed by the companies that at the end of the day are our clients. So as of the moment that our clients are asking, who is your team? Who will take care of my account? How diverse is your team? If they are looking more perspectives, this will bring a change in the legal firms. And this will take us to the next topic, that is the supply chain and how the places in which you pass through or the place that you are currently can take into consideration diversity in the hiring of suppliers. What is the important that is that this is when you are selecting suppliers? I think that considering what you mentioned, it's important to understand the ecosystem when we talk about diversity and inclusion. We must understand all the players and the entities that are inside this ecosystem. So you have, for example, a part of responsibility, you have the companies with others, you have the civil society, and in our environment, when we talk about private sector, it's important to understand how the companies and the offices must have responsibility, and I think this is the word that is more adequate, to have social responsibility to implement those changes. In the company, as he mentioned, they have a dynamism, an environment that will allow a speed to move different that the office can face. But when we inside the company, I will talk about myself as a client of offices. When we are hiring a service, it will depend on the maturity of the company and the discussions on diversity and inclusion. You cannot have partners and suppliers that are in a contradiction of what you are doing, that are not talking the same language that you are talking. So based on that, what we did there, and this was an initiative brought by the affinity group, the racial affinity group, and as a consequence, I was from legal, and legal was a pilot inside this planning, inside this project, that was to start to argue the firms to understand the degree of maturity and the degree of implementation in terms of diversity that are working inside the structures. We had good surprises. We had other surprises that were not so good. But I think that what was more impacted was the way that they received this topic, because we were with a little bit of fear how they were about to receive it. And the good surprises is that we found out that some offices were already with some actions in place. And I think that it's important for those that are formed firms and that have actions in this sense. The companies must know, if the companies are not asking, I think it's important the firms to show, to share what is being done, because there are a lot of good things being done. And if the company is not asking, uh, sometimes the firm is working on that. And this can, and sometimes the movement is the opposite. The firm sometimes can influence the company and show how they are advanced in these issues and how they can be a partner and a transformation agent in this type of situation. So I think that we started with this pilot in our legal department with this assessment, and then this became a policy to all the areas from the company, and then this was more than an Excel spreadsheet. It was a policy really established inside the company, and all the areas had this commitment that the supplier needs to have some actions and show some actions of diversity and inclusion being implemented in their structures. And the actions among different that we were not implementing, since a ranking of the companies with more or less actions and that were talking, that had to do with the actions that we had, and they would have an order of preference or even be inside a range or different range of fee, and this was all shared with the company. It was so transparency is very important in the process. The companies must know that they are being noticed about this perspective. And also we had some cases that we suspended some suppliers once we identified that some actions were not aligned with our policy, that was in the opposite side of what we were implementing. So I participated in these processes, and it was a big company that was, it was a consultancy firm that was managing a big project in the company that time. And in a certain meeting, the manager of this company that was not participating in the meeting with frequency, and he was there in this meeting, and in this meeting, he simply talked for 1 hour and a half to the only man in the meeting. It was a analysts, IT analysts that didn't was not aware about the project, and the women were looking at each other and was, oh, what is going on? They are not. He's not looking uh, at us. And then we had an investigation regarding this fact, and we understood that was a company that had an issue, a very structural issue regarding sexism. So then we decided to end the relation with this company, not saying that you are sexist, but in a way that they could understand that we were not aligned regarding diversity and inclusion. So you can see how important is the companies to be aligned when you have a company that is really very committed with that. The suppliers need to be on the same page because more and more this will be asked. And I have been seeing that the firms are in the front head. They're doing a lot. And I would like to see the firms more bold to share because some initiatives are being done and they need to share so that we can have an opportunity to evolve. So I think that there is a very specific area, the four thoughts to think and to evolve uh, based on this exchange. So we are in a moment of evolving that we all can allow that. I think that these stories are wonderful. And this shows really the impact of the company that the company can have in the legal market, in the market of all the suppliers that are part of the supply chain. And and this non-alignment on the purpose, this is very important to the business. Perhaps in this meeting, people that were representing the legal firm, if they were from a diverse group, this wouldn't happen. And this is, we should think about it. Diversity will add value. And when you have diverse people, you have interlocution with different people also. Because once more, is what we were mentioning yesterday. At the end of the day, we are all people and we connect with people by identity, by interest. So I think it was wonderful, your example, because it was an example very tangible regarding the value of diversity, and this must be taken into consideration in the supply chain.
I want you to talk a little bit about the work that you did at INTA and at the Presidential Task Force. And because then we are also talking about impact with an external stakeholder and within an international association that may be diverse by nature because there I guess every country is represented there, or almost every country. But even in an environment where you would have diversity by nature, when you have intentionality and when you have a work that comes from a group that is also diverse, the impact that it has on the organization. And we talked about some examples of tangible examples that we already see in the association of changes that were implemented after the report that was generated by this task force. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, I think it's going to be very beneficial to the public.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, as you say, the International Trademark Association is international by its very nature. It has representatives from almost every country worldwide. However, the intention behind the DEI task force was not just to look at diversity, but it was also to look at equity and inclusion within the association. INTA is a member-based association, and I was very clear. I was one of the co-chairs of that task force, but I was very clear that we had a duty to our membership, that they felt like that the association was theirs, wherever they came from, whichever area of society they came from, and whichever culture they came from, they could feel like the society was theirs, and they could form a full part of the work of the society. And there are challenges with that, of course, because, as you know, a lot of the events tend to happen in the United States and in English, and there are some other languages as well. So there were lots of practical issues and practical impediments to being really opening full equity and inclusion within INTA. We spent a year and a half looking at all aspects of the association. We interviewed people on the board of directors. We interviewed all the staff. We interviewed the nominating committee, the people who decide the future leaders of the association. We did a survey of the membership and asked the membership for their feedback on issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as a result of that, we've created a report with recommendations across 11 areas of the association, including training of leaders of the association on diversity topics, including the appointment of leaders of the association, as well as areas such as building bridges with other associations. So we wanted to make sure that INTA was a leader together with other associations at a national level in particular countries to work on diversity within those jurisdictions as well. It was really a very detailed piece of work with a lot of concrete recommendations. One of the biggest and the first recommendations was to create a DEI policy, because INTA did not have a policy on DEI up until the work that we did in the task force. Now the association has a mission statement on DEI and the policy is being finalized. As a result of the task force, a DEI council was created. There's a diversity officer in the association. So diversity is considered on the board by a vice president of the association. So they ex officio have that role, and they're expected. We set out expectations for that role and what that person needed to do on diversity. It's not just a title. They actually needed to do work related to DEI during their year as a vice president. And we've seen. I'm also on the Programming Advisory Council of INTA, and that deals with future programming, future sessions of annual meetings and so on. And I can tell you that as a result of the work of this focus on DEI, now DEI is very much front of mind in terms of the composition of panels, the topics that we talk about. So you will never see, hopefully, again, an all-male panel at an INTA event, because people are conscious that is just not, it's not acceptable. And you, as you said, so the perspective that you get from different people working together, talking together, you get different views, and it's much more interesting. You come away with a greater experience. So there've been some concrete changes, I think, in the association, but it's only a start, really. It's only been going for three years or so, but it's very much driven from the leaders at the top, and the board has complete buy-in, I think, of the DEI principles, the mission statement, and I'm proud as a member of the association to be part of an association that has those values and wants to make people feel included in the association. And yeah, so I mean, happy to talk a bit more about that, but I think maybe you want to finalize with some other questions or comments.
So we still have 5 minutes to go. I think that perhaps we can open to see if there is any question from the audience. I will also look here because there might be questions from people who are at home. If I can read, I need my glasses. So let's see. Is there any question from the audience that you want to, from the panelists, about what they spoke or about themselves? Tem alguma pergunta da audiência? Vocês querem saber alguma
Any
coisa?
question from the audience? Do you want to ask something to the panelists about the policies implemented?
I would like to thank you for this topic. It's very relevant for all of us. I loved the perspective from Michael that in law firms it's kind of more difficult to be implemented. Unfortunately, this is a reality. And I would like to thank you, Andrea, too, to touch a point that for me is very important, that you have to be in the position of supporting the real people that is facing all of these difficulties. For example, when you heard from someone that that person is not feeling good or received or well received, we have to just listen and to try to understand and not to provide instantly a solution. So for me, this topic is very important. We have to be learning and really hearing everyone in order not to solve the problem, but to be in the position of understanding. So I would like to hear more from you. How do you suggest it for us, for example, non-Black people or uh, people in the position of a privilege? How do you suggest those to act in a company and as in a firm as well as in a law firm and whatever?
Sorry, I cannot listen what she's saying to proceed with the translation.
Agora tá.
Yeah, now it's working. Okay.
Onde as empresas
So
entendem
where
que
the companies sometimes think that they should remove women from the cycle of trips. Oh, they have children. Oh, you no longer need to travel. But I didn't say that I don't want to travel. That the travel is bad for me. So I think that we should listen to people. And can you remember that when we were talking about establishing the relation, it's important to understand what is paining the person. This is important. It's where we are going to connect with this person. So it's important to listen from these people, people from different groups. What makes sense? Because sometimes we want to go right, to be right, and sometimes we are not effective and we are not doing the best to their person and to what the person can deliver.
I think we may have another question, but if I could just add to that. So allyship, I think from the perspective of LGBT people, allyship is important. And although people may not be part of a minority, they can still form, really play a big role in diversity activities within a company or a firm. Our diversity committee has people who are diverse and people who are not diverse. Unfortunately, it tends to be mainly women who are taking on those responsibilities than non-diverse women in the firm, which is something we really want to change, and we're encouraging more men to get involved. But allyship, I think, is really important, and I, in my career, I've been helped and made to feel more comfortable by allies, LGBT allies, for example. And, I think that's something we can all be allies and really make everyone else feel comfortable and feel like they belong in the jobs.
So I think we do have time for one more question. So, Roberto, what do you want to know?
Roberto Ribeiro, de Daniel Advogados. Parabéns.
I'm Roberto from Painel Lawyers. Congratulations.
Roberto Ribeiro.
I'm Roberto Ribeiro from Daniel Advogados. Congratulations, Andrea, Michael, Isabella, for the panel. My question goes to Andrea. Andrea, you mentioned a point that there are some people under your mentorship. My curiosity is to know if currently the challenges, doubts from these people that are under your mentorship, if they are very similar with what you faced in your youth, or if today you notice that the youth have different challenges from the one that you had. Thank you.
Estão me ouvindo?
Can you hear me?
É uma excelente pergunta.
So it's a great question.
Eu tenderia,
I
gostaria de
would
responder que
like to answer
seriam
that
diferentes.
this would be very different because, as I mentioned, I didn't have a mentor like me, someone that would look like me, that I could mirror myself and
E aí, para mim,
follow.
só esse
So
pequeno,
for me,
essas
only
gap já seria uma grande diferença.
this gap would be an enormous difference. But unfortunately, I see that these stress are very similar. And even moving forward, having moved forward in terms of society, we are still in the very beginning. We still have a lot to do. And consequently, and unfortunately, these girls suffer with the anguish that I suffered, although the representativity is not one of them, but the places you need to have more people because there's no use to have a single Andrea. People need to see that reflected in different places, in the offices, in the court, in the quantity, because to have a single person, then you have the meritocracy. That is this very dangerous. So the lack of representativeness in a massive way, this is something that will join the anguishes from the that I had in the past with the ones that exist today. I would like to thank Andrea and Michael for this panel, for sharing so important topics and so necessary. Unfortunately, our time is up, but they will be here if you have any other questions. And thank you so much for being people so important and allies active in this agenda of diversity.